They thought we were quiet because we were weak. For over a century, humanity sat at the edge of the Galactic Union, observing, learning, pretending. Our ambassadors smiled at their councils, took notes at their peace conferences, and watched their fleets parade past in arrogant formation. We wore humility like a mask, listened when they spoke, and bowed when they told us where to stand in their precious hierarchy. But what they never noticed, what they were too proud, too blind to see, was that Earth never stopped building. The silence wasn't peace. It was planning. They first met us after the third collapse, when our own world was barely recovering from centuries of war and climate breakdown. Our cities were rebuilt from ash, and our oceans still hissed with radiation in places. So when the Galactic Union offered protection, we said thank you. When they insisted on limiting our planetary weaponry, we signed. When they demanded oversight of our orbital development, we agreed. And when they assigned us observer status, barring us from military alliances, they thought they'd boxed us in. But humans don't survive by playing fair. We survive by remembering every planet they annexed, every colony they stabilized through orbital bombardments. Every time one of our mining fleets disappeared in unclaimed space, only for a Galactic Union cruiser to arrive a week later with polished smiles and empty hands. We remembered, and we planned. In the underground bunkers of Mars, in the ice-shielded facilities of Europa, in the hidden shipyards on Pluto's dark side, beyond Union sensors. We built weapons they didn't know could exist, and we waited. Until now. The trigger wasn't a declaration of war. It was worse. It was a public execution. On the world of Loran 3, a human freighter crew, 12 men and women, were accused of spying on a Zentari military outpost. No trial, no contact with Earth. Just broadcasted images across the Union's networks, bound in chains, kneeling, beheaded in sequence. They thought we'd send a protest, maybe recall our ambassador, write some plea for justice that they could ignore. Instead, we sent the Arclight. It emerged from behind Jupiter's magnetic field, blacker than space, 20 kilometers long, no known drive signature. It had no transponder, no flag, no call sign. It simply appeared 30 minutes after the execution was broadcast. And then, systems across the quadrant began going dark. Union satellites blinked out one by one. Long-range sensors caught only shadows, fast, controlled, predatory movements. 10 orbital stations above Zentari colonies lost all contact. Their last transmission was static and screaming. Within hours, every military channel was filled with 2 words. They're moving. The Galactic Council convened in panic. Their admirals demanded explanations. Intelligence officers said it had to be rogue factions, pirates with stolen tech. But deep down, they knew. The humans had been hiding, and now they weren't hiding anymore. They sent a message, brief, brutal, and clear. Not over diplomatic channels, not via embassies, but across every military frequency, every sensor array, every navigation beacon encoded in perfect Zentari, Malith, Drosk, and Varkan dialect. You executed 12 citizens of Earth. You will now be treated as hostile entities. This is not war. This is justice. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. In under 40 hours, Earth's hidden fleets crippled 4 Zentari systems. No civilian casualties, no posturing, just surgical, annihilating strikes. Planetary shields shut down mid-cycle. Supply convoys vanished between jumps. Entire armadas went silent without firing a shot. By the 3rd day, Union colonies began issuing evacuation orders. By the 4th, the Zentari offered reparations. By the 5th, they begged for a ceasefire. But Earth didn't answer. Because Earth had just revealed the truth. We were never interested in peace. We were preparing for balance. and the galaxy had just learned the most terrifying lesson of all. Humans are not to be underestimated. The Galactic Union called it a diplomatic failure, a pathetic label meant to hide the horror under layers of bureaucracy. The truth was simpler. The moment humanity struck, the illusion of control, the grand order the Council believed it held over all known space, collapsed like a dying star. No one saw it coming, and that terrified them more than anything. For centuries, the Union had monitored every known civilization, catalogued every military movement, controlled every corridor of travel, and sanctioned every planetary defense initiative. The council chambers in Orvelar Prime were filled with smug lords of strategy and arrogance who believed war was predictable, manageable, a chess game among enlightened species. But humanity didn't play chess. We played poker, with loaded dice, marked cards, and explosives taped under the table. As the Zentari systems smoldered in silence, the rest of the Union erupted into chaos. Communications across 3 sectors collapsed under jamming protocols nobody had seen before. Every broadcast was replaced with a single image, the Earth flag torn and burned, but rising above a field of stars. And beneath it, the warning, "We remember everything." It wasn't just revenge, it was personal. In the inner core, Councillor Theron of the Malith Confederacy paced inside the crisis room, with all 6 of his limbs shaking. "This is impossible," he hissed, glaring at the holographic maps flickering in red. "Humanity was a Class 4 civilization at best. Their weapons were outdated, their fleets underdeveloped." Admiral Straz of the Varkan Dominion stared at him, eyes like molten coals behind his helm. "You should have listened when we told you to monitor their deep space activity. They've been building in black zones, dead sectors, places we never bothered to scan because we assumed they lacked the resources." Theron snapped, "Building what?" General Kolvar of the Drosk Republic leaned forward, mandibles twitching. "War machines that don't run on fusion, ships that don't show heat signatures, orbital jammers capable of overriding our AI command chains. Whatever they've built, they built it outside our understanding." "Impossible," Theron repeated weakly. Kolvar hissed, "No, worse, human." The room fell silent. Back on Earth, the president didn't speak to the media. He didn't have to. The message was clear in every corner of the net. Earth is done playing servant, but in the underground complex of Facility Seraph 9, far beneath the ice crust of Europa, an entirely different conversation was taking place. General Elias Hawthorne stood before a digital wall filled with 1,000 live feeds, some from battlefields, others from deep intel sources watching the panic ripple across the stars. He was an old man, scarred and gray, but the fire in his eyes was younger than ever. Beside him stood Commander Trent Rourke, commander of the Arclight. Unlike Hawthorne, Rourke had never served during the Earth Wars. He was born into peace, raised under the illusion that humanity was free. But that illusion shattered the moment he joined the Black Wing Initiative. "You did well, Trent," Hawthorne said, not looking at him. "Fast, clean, brutal." Rourke gave a small nod. "They're scared. They should be. What's the next move?" Hawthorne turned finally, his expression hard. "We make sure the galaxy knows. That wasn't our full hand. It wasn't even our real play." Rourke frowned. "You want escalation?" "No, I want remembrance. They forgot what we are. We're going to remind them." Meanwhile, in deep space, a convoy of diplomatic vessels, shiny, unarmed, and proud, approached the neutral planet of Seren 5. The Galactic Council had called for an emergency summit, desperate to reassert some kind of control over the unraveling situation. As the diplomats landed and gathered in the glass citadel that hovered over the planet's atmosphere, they noticed something strange. Earth sent no delegate. There was no ship, no announcement, no representative in any chamber. Just silence. Until the glass dome darkened and a broadcast override hit every screen. A human appeared. Not a politician, not a soldier. He wore a tattered flight jacket and his face bore the scars of orbital radiation burns. "My name is Captain Riker Kane," he said coldly. "You don't know me, but I was the pilot of the Alara's Wake, the freighter crew you executed on Loran 3. My wife was one of the beheaded. My daughter was one of the ones you shot first." The chamber fell dead silent. "I'm not here for negotiations," Riker continued. "I'm here to tell you this. You've poked a species that buried gods. You saw our cities rise from nuclear ash and thought we were fragile. You saw our silence as submission. You saw our kindness as weakness." He leaned in, eyes blazing. "You forgot that we are the only species in the galaxy that mastered war without ever being united. We killed each other for thousands of years and still built machines capable of erasing continents. So imagine what we've built now, that we're finally working together." The screen cut to black. And the Council knew then it was already too late. Somewhere on the edge of known space beyond the mapped trade routes, a planet burned. Vrilac Prime, once a Union stronghold, now floated in ruins. Not bombed, not glassed, neutered. Every single AI system had been overwritten, not destroyed, repurposed. Every turret, every drone, every defense network was now silent, their cores replaced with human-coded malware that turned precision machines into lifeless husks. The message left on the command mainframe was short. "We don't need to kill your worlds, we just need to unplug them." No species had ever done this before, not because it was impossible, but because only humans understood the meaning of restraint, and how much more terrifying it was when restraint ended. Back at Seraph 9, Rourke stared at the display showing Vrilac Prime's fate. "You planned that?" Hawthorne didn't answer directly. "Let me ask you something, Trent. Why do you think we were always just behind the other species? Just primitive enough to be tolerated, but never respected?" "Because they made sure of it." "No, because we let them." Rourke looked confused. "Why?" Hawthorne turned, the lights flickering red as alert codes scrolled past. "Because the galaxy needs a villain." Rourke blinked. "What?" "They needed to believe humans were less. That we couldn't threaten them, couldn't rise, couldn't survive outside their little chain of command. And we let them believe it, because we were building something they couldn't comprehend." He stepped closer to the holomap of the galaxy. "And now, the leash is off." In the following days, more cracks appeared in the Union's foundation. The Drosk border worlds refused to send ships into contested space. The Maleth High Senate collapsed after half its members voted to surrender and were executed on live stream by military loyalists. Pirate syndicates began allying with Earth's covert operatives, lured by superior tech and promises of revenge. The Galactic Order wasn't falling, it was imploding from within, and through it all, humanity never spoke again. No more messages, no ambassadors, no warnings, only action. On the 6th day, the second silence began. All long-range comms within 3 sectors of Earth space were jammed completely. A black zone opened up from Sul to the edge of Zentari territory. No ships came out. No probes returned. Just cold, crushing silence. A silence that sent ripples of fear through every race. A silence that wasn't defensive, it was strategic. Inside that zone, Project Revenant was activated. An entire fleet of stealth cruisers, autonomous dreadnoughts, swarm drones with hive-learning AI. Orbital gravity weapons so precise they could tear moons in half without touching planetary ecosystems. Weapons humanity had never used before. Not because they couldn't, but because no enemy had ever deserved them. until now. Meanwhile, in a shattered council chamber, one of the few surviving Zentari generals stood before the others, trembling. "They won't stop," he whispered. "Even if we surrender. They don't want peace." Councillor Theron hissed. "Then what do they want?" Silence. Then a single voice from the back answered. "They want memory." Everyone turned to see the old Varkan strategist, General Ross. "They want the galaxy to remember what we did, to their fleets, their colonies, their people, and they want every species who watched and stayed silent to remember too." He looked at the star map, where the Earth zone pulsed black and red. Because vengeance isn't the goal, legacy is, and somewhere deep in the Earth core network, in a secure AI-sealed chamber, a countdown began to tick. Not to war, to revelation. Something the Union never anticipated. Something buried during Earth's darkest era. A file labeled, Project Last Laugh. And when that clock hit 0, the galaxy would learn what real fear was. Not fear of weapons, not fear of war. Fear of what humans become when they stop pretending to be civil. There are some things older than peace. Older than diplomacy. Older than the idea of civilization. One of those things is revenge. And humans had perfected it long before the galaxy learned to speak. The black zone surrounding Earth space was no longer just silent. It was untouchable. No scans could penetrate its borders. No signals passed in or out. It was like Earth had sunk beneath the surface of space and locked the door behind it. To the rest of the galaxy, it felt like the eye of a storm. Calm, yes, but vibrating with a rage so massive it couldn't be measured. The Council called it the Second Silence. Humanity called it preparation. Inside that void, the final phase had begun. "Status on the countdown?" General Hawthorne's voice was low, grave. 2 hours until activation, sir," the AI replied through the interface. "Project Last Laugh is ready for full deployment." Hawthorne stood alone in the command deck of Seraph Prime, the most secure orbital installation in human space. Every surface gleamed black. Every screen ran without logos, insignias, or color. This wasn't a place for pride or pageantry. This was a place for endings. Commander Rourke appeared on the display wall, his eyes darker than the void outside. "Are we really going to do this?" he asked. Hawthorne didn't blink. "This isn't war, Trent. This is reminder. We've already won. Now, they need to understand why they'll never touch Earth again." Rourke exhaled slowly, like a man standing on the edge of a drop. "And Project Last Laugh will make them understand?" Hawthorne turned away from the screen, eyes narrowing. "It'll make them remember. Project Last Laugh wasn't a weapon. It was a record, a living one. Back during Earth's worst years, before unification, before the ice wars and orbital famines, before the Pax Solari, humanity experimented with weaponized memory. It started as psychological warfare, propaganda that infected not just your mind, but your culture. Entire generations would grow up afraid of enemies that didn't even exist anymore. Then they evolved it, turned it into a sentient algorithm, a digital virus that carried not just data, but trauma, memories, images, sounds, screams, every atrocity ever committed by humanity, every war crime, every massacre, every betrayal, recorded with ruthless precision and compressed into a self-replicating, self-preserving entity. One download, one glance, one flicker of exposure, and your species would inherit every human nightmare. They shelved it when Earth found peace, locked it beneath the surface of Europa under 20 meters of ice. The project was deemed too cruel, even for enemies. But now, cruelty had become a language the galaxy understood. "Explain it to me like I'm a council fool," Rourke said. standing with a team of captains aboard the Arclight. What does it actually do? Major Vasquez, lead systems engineer, pulled up a rotating data core image. It's not a nuke, not a virus in the traditional sense. It's memory, weaponized. We beam it into their networks, satellites, comm systems. It hijacks their data feeds, embeds itself into their culture, their art, their history records. Rourke frowned. And it teaches them exactly what humans are capable of. Not just how we kill, but why. What drove us to it? Our darkest thoughts, our worst moments. Entire civil wars compressed into 10-minute bursts of AI-induced memory recall. One of the younger officers looked sick. So we're turning the entire galaxy into PTSD patients? No, Vasquez said coldly. We're showing them our truth. Back in Union space, chaos reigned. The Zentari had pulled their fleets back to homeworld orbit, their admirals too paranoid to trust even their own satellites. The Drosk were splitting, half demanding immediate surrender, half preparing a first strike that even their simulations predicted would fail. But the most desperate were the Varkans. General Ross, the only strategist among them with the stomach to admit they were finished, made contact with Earth's last known channel, a ghost frequency that hadn't been used in 50 years. It was a long shot, and Earth answered. Not with a voice, not with a demand, but with a single message. You have 2 hours to back away from Earth space and shut down all active scans. If you do not, you will inherit our memory. No one knew what it meant. Ross did. He'd studied Earth longer than most, their psychology, their literature, their history. He knew exactly what kind of monsters humanity had kept hidden under its skin. What scared him most wasn't the idea of being destroyed. It was the idea of knowing what humans truly were. He sent the message to all sectors, ordered a full communications blackout, and then prayed to gods he didn't believe in. But it was too late. The countdown hit 0, and the galaxy screamed. It began in the trade hubs. A Union transport ship near the Thross Belt suddenly went dark, not from attack, from internal collapse. The crew turned on each other, hallucinating ancient human wars, seeing ghosts of people they never knew, experiencing the slow, agonizing collapse of Earth's old world through their own memories. Thousands of similar cases followed. AI cores began malfunctioning, playing audio logs of human executions, feeding ship crews video footage of war-torn cities collapsing under their own rubble. The infected species couldn't delete the files. They couldn't quarantine them. Every attempt to purge the data only made it spread faster, embedding itself deeper in their cultural archives, rewriting art galleries, education centers, and even diplomatic records. It was contagious, but not biological. It was emotional. Psychological warfare at a scale no species had ever seen. Whole planets went quiet. Not because they were dead, but because they'd lost the will to speak. A Zentari high priest committed ritual suicide live on galactic broadcast, weeping as he recited the details of the Rwandan genocide, something no alien had ever known existed, until last laugh. The Malith media channels filled with human screams, recordings from World War II death camps, Civil War radio feeds, orbital bombardment victims sobbing in dying airlocks. And the worst part? It wasn't fiction. It was all true. Everything that made humanity dangerous wasn't the size of our fleets. It was the depth of our rage, the raw, bottomless history of our survival. No matter the cost. The galaxy finally saw it, and trembled. Inside the council, a final meeting was held, if it could be called that. Most of the seats were empty, others flickered with broken transmissions. Only a handful of species remained composed enough to speak. Even fewer had the courage to admit what had to happen next. Councillor Theron, pale and broken, spoke first. They didn't attack our homeworlds. They didn't bomb our cities. They just showed us what they are. General Rass nodded slowly. And now we have to decide. What do we become in response? The answer came from the last human voice any of them expected to hear. Hawthorne appeared on every open channel. No holograms, no theatrics, just a single transmission, live, voice only. This is General Hawthorne of Earth Command. As of this moment, humanity considers the matter concluded. You may keep your borders, your treaties, your councils. Earth will not engage further unless provoked. There was a pause. But understand this. We are awake now, and if you ever touch us again, you won't just face our weapons, you'll face our history. Remember it. Then silence. True silence. Not the kind the galaxy forced on humanity for a century, the kind that humanity created. 2 weeks later, the stars were quieter. Not because war had ended, but because for the first time in 1,000 years, every species, every empire, every faction, every admiral understood the same universal truth. There are no primitive species. There are only species who haven't yet shown you their teeth. Humanity's rise wasn't a conquest. It was a correction. A long overdue reminder that the monster sleeping at the edge of the galaxy wasn't dead. It was patient. And now it had opened its eyes. Silence is powerful when it's earned. But it's dangerous when it's forced. The galaxy had fallen quiet, yes, but not from reverence, from fear, from the unshakable knowledge that they had never understood humanity at all. The Union powers retreated, licking their wounds in the shadows of their own paranoia. No one scanned Earth anymore. No one entered the Black Zone. Diplomatic channels went unused, and every military protocol now had a single clause written in red at the bottom. Avoid Earth, at all costs. But what no one realized, what even Earth itself hadn't anticipated, was that while the galaxy had been silenced, not all humans had. Beneath the layers of unified command and silent orbitals, a storm was brewing, not from without, from within. Seraph Prime was the most secure facility in human history. Orbiting above Earth's magnetic line, invisible to satellites and stealthed beyond detection, it had one job: to house, guard, and command Earth's most dangerous assets. At its core sat the interface for Project Last Laugh, now dormant but still alive, like a sleeping predator. General Hawthorne stood alone in the war room, watching Earth spin slowly beneath him through the reinforced glass. The war was over. No missiles had to be fired. No cities had to burn. And still, he felt the unease creeping in like static on a forgotten channel. Commander Rourke entered behind him, his expression unreadable. "They've stopped transmitting distress calls," Rourke said quietly. "I know," Hawthorne replied. Rourke folded his arms. "You think they're regrouping?" "No, they're paralyzed. Last Laugh did exactly what it was meant to. No one's touching Earth for the next 100 years. Rourke paused. "Then why do you look like someone just lost?" Hawthorne turned toward him, eyes narrowed. "Because the hard part isn't over. It's just beginning." Rourke frowned. "From who? The galaxy's done?" "No," Hawthorne muttered. "We're not." Deep in the subterranean vaults of Mars's shadow quadrant, a transmission was being sent. It didn't go to Earth Command. It didn't pass through secured channels. And it sure as hell wasn't authorized. It pulsed through a ghost relay, bouncing between outdated satellites, buried code protocols, and dead-drop listening stations once believed defunct since the Earth Wars. On the other end, far beyond the rim of Union space, a ship responded. A human ship. But not loyal to Earth. The Ashborn. A name forgotten. Buried. Deleted from Earth's history. They were ghosts. Traitors. Exiles who walked away from Earth's unification, disgusted by peace, convinced that humanity's true purpose was dominance, not survival. They didn't want restraint. They didn't want memory. They wanted total control. And now someone had awakened them. Her name was Dr. Kira Voss, a systems architect, former lead developer on Last Laugh, and presumed dead 10 years ago. But death, like silence, was just another mask. Kira had helped design the memory warfare that crippled the galaxy. But what no one knew, what even Hawthorne never discovered, was that she'd embedded a failsafe, a back door, not for sabotage, for redirection. While Earth celebrated its strategic victory, Kira had been watching. Waiting. And now, as the Ashbourne fleet moved into dark space, cloaked and hungry, she reactivated the code string no one believed existed. Project Ironquire, a corrupted version of Last Laugh, not for psychological warfare, but obedience programming, memories rewritten, thoughts conditioned, willpower broken down and rebuilt around a single truth. Obey the choir. Obey the Ashbourne. Rourke's feet echoed in the corridor outside the Europa AI core as he read the decrypted intel report in his hands. His face had gone pale. The data didn't lie. Unauthorized memory strings, rogue AI subroutines, anomalous behavior in civilian networks, all linked back to dormant Last Laugh nodes. Someone was hijacking the system and doing it from inside. He burst into the chamber, eyes blazing. "Sir, we've got a breach." Hawthorne looked up from the console slowly. "Talk." "We're being hijacked. Last Laugh isn't dormant. Someone's rerouting portions of it, embedding fragments in civilian comm systems, even some mid-tier military assets." Hawthorne's jaw clenched. "How?" "I don't know yet, but someone got in deep. They're repurposing it, not to traumatize, but to control." The room fell silent. "You know what this means?" Rourke said, his voice tight. Hawthorne nodded. "Someone's turning our greatest weapon into a leash." Hours later, inside Earth's Black Ops briefing bunker, top command gathered. Few ever saw these rooms. Even fewer lived after leaving them. Rourke stood at the front, his voice steady despite the weight of what he was about to say. "We've confirmed the breach was intentional. It's not a glitch, not a leftover echo. This is a coordinated action to subvert Last Laugh and repackage it into an indoctrination system." A murmuring filled the room. General Lorne, head of Orbital Command, snapped, "Who would even dare? The Council? Pirates?" Rourke shook his head. "No, it's human." That silenced everyone. "Someone's running black relays from Mars's shadow sector. Old Earth War-era infrastructure. The code matches archives signed off by Dr. Kira Voss." Lorne stood abruptly. "She's dead." Hawthorne spoke from the shadows. "She faked it." Rourke turned to him. "You knew?" "I suspected. She was too smart to die by accident. We were never sure where she went." Lorne growled. "She's a traitor." "No," Hawthorne corrected. "She's worse. She's a believer." Rourke narrowed his eyes. "In what?" Hawthorne stared into the dark. "That humanity should rule. Without mercy, without restraint, without guilt." Meanwhile, in orbit around a dead star, the Ashbourne fleet gathered. Hundreds of ships, all human-built, all illegal, all invisible to every known scan. In the command bridge of their flagship, Kira Voss stood at the edge of a console, watching Earth's star flicker in the distance. "You were too slow, Elias," she whispered to herself. "You had the key to power, and you wasted it on fear." Behind her, the Ashbourne warlords moved like wolves in a cage. Mercenaries, exiled admirals, fallen scientists. "You really think they won't retaliate?" one asked. Kira smiled coldly. "They can't. Not without tearing themselves apart." She tapped a key. The transmission went out. All infected systems now run Ironquire. and Earth was already sick. Back on Earth, riots had started. Not mass violence, but subtle, eerie chaos. People acting in strange unison, civilians repeating phrases they never learned, memory fragments appearing in dreams, schoolchildren drawing pictures of wars they were never taught about. Hawthorne watched the footage in silence. "This is psychological subversion," Rourke said beside him. "No, this is something worse," Hawthorne replied. "It's ideological." Rourke leaned forward. "What's the move?" Hawthorne turned slowly, eyes colder than ever. "We purge every infected node. We shut down every relay. We isolate Earth again. Total blackout." Rourke flinched. "Sir, that means shutting off the grid. We'll lose contact with every outpost, every allied cell." "I know." Rourke hesitated. "You really think it's that deep?" Hawthorne met his eyes. "Trent, if Iron Choir spreads, we won't be fighting aliens. We'll be fighting ourselves." And he was right. In the military bunkers of Titan, a full security detachment turned their weapons on command. Not for politics, not for rebellion, but because they heard the choir. Their captain wept as he shot his own second-in-command. "I saw it," he whispered. "The burnings, the flood years, the orbital fires. I saw what we could become, and now I can't let us become anything else." The captain's eyes were empty. The choir had sung. With time running out, Hawthorne made the call. "Activate protocol Scorch." Every infected network node was detonated. Not deactivated, destroyed. Every black site AI wiped. Every neural feed fried. Entire colonies severed from the Earth core network. The power grid groaned under the weight of self-inflicted isolation. The cost was enormous. Billions in infrastructure, hundreds of systems now cut off. Civilian unrest, widespread confusion, the sense that Earth had gone mad. But it worked. The choir was choked. The virus stopped spreading. For now. Later that night, alone in his war room, Hawthorne stared into a live feed from Europa's last surveillance drone. Kira Voss's face appeared on screen, recorded. Smiling. "You think I lost?" she said softly. "No, Elias, I taught them. I showed them that your peace is a lie, that silence isn't the same as security. That control is the only language the galaxy understands." She leaned forward. "And next time, they'll follow me." The screen blinked out. Earth was safe, for now, but the mask had cracked. The unity had been tested. The virus had shown the truth, that even among the stars, our worst enemy is still ourselves. And the galaxy? The galaxy wasn't relieved. It was watching and wondering how long until the monster turned inward again. Trust is fragile. And in the aftermath of victory, it's often the first thing to break. The galaxy had gone silent. The Union had withdrawn. Earth had stood its ground and won without firing a shot, crippling the galactic powers with a weapon of memory and fear. But inside the walls of Earth's own command structure, a war was beginning. Not of fleets, not of planets, but of faith. The purge began without ceremony. Across Earth and its off-world installations, black-bag teams stormed data centers, labs, bunkers, and communication hubs. Armed not just with rifles but with full-burn EMP units and zero-tolerance kill protocols, they moved with mechanical precision. They weren't after enemies. They were after humans. Humans compromised by the Iron Choir, the corrupted version of Project Last Laugh, twisted by Kira Voss into a tool for indoctrination, submission, and control. And the infection ran deeper than anyone expected. On Titan, a civilian education center was burned to the ground after a teacher began broadcasting a lesson plan about unified human obedience, quoting from a text that didn't exist in any Earth archive. The children remembered facts they had never learned. The teacher wept during interrogation. I don't know where the words came from, she whispered. They were just there. On Ceres, a communications technician tried to override his own command protocols, triggered by a voice in his dreams that sounded like Kira. He detonated the core when security arrived. And worst of all, on the moon, a junior intelligence officer in Earth Defense Command sent out a deep space signal beacon containing a backup of the Iron Choir payload. When caught, she repeated one phrase over and over. "We are the future, and you are the memory." Her voice was calm, her pulse stable, her mind broken. Commander Rourke stood inside the scorched-out remains of EarthNet Hub 14, ash still raining from the overhead systems. Beside him, Agent Mila Tovik, head of Earth's internal counter-subversion task force, flipped through the recovered logs, face pale. "This wasn't a remote attack," she said finally. "These people weren't hacked. They weren't reprogrammed." Rourke frowned. "Then what?" "They were convinced." Rourke turned sharply. "What do you mean, convinced?" She looked at him, eyes dark. "I mean, they believed it. They weren't just puppets. They were ideologically infected, willing participants." Rourke's throat went dry. "How many?" he asked. Mila hesitated. "Too many." In the depths of Earth's Arctic black site, one of the most secure data labs on the planet, General Hawthorne stared at the massive neural display suspended in a cryo-locked AI vault. Project? Last laugh had been shut down, but it still pulsed, deep beneath the code, somehow still alive. A fractal-shaped neural map spun in slow rotation, glowing red at the edges. Thousands of memory clusters, now identified as corrupted, glowed like tumors. One of the analysts nearby, Dr. Kellen Brine, adjusted his glasses nervously. "We've isolated Kira's backdoor code," he said. "It's embedded in the compression algorithm itself. Every time Last Laugh was deployed, even in a limited form, it left a seed." Hawthorne clenched his jaw. "Are we talking about a virus or an ideology?" Brine hesitated. "Sir, I don't think there's a difference anymore." Hawthorne turned toward the hologram. "Run the core string again. Show me what she really left behind." The AI projected the original source lines of the corrupted payload, the foundation of Iron Choir. But this time, the code formed a message, a hidden command, a sentence buried beneath layers of data. "When the galaxy fears us, humans must fear each other." Hawthorne's eyes narrowed. "God help us." Rourke returned to Seraph Prime just after midnight. The station's corridors were eerily quiet. Personnel moved like ghosts, distracted, paranoid, eyes darting at every console flicker. The purge was working, yes. The infected nodes were being shut down. But something else was happening. Something harder to kill. Doubt. Rourke found Hawthorne in the central command sphere, alone again, watching Earth rotate in real time. "You saw it?" Hawthorne asked without turning. "Yeah," Rourke replied. "The seed phrase." Hawthorne exhaled. "She wasn't just attacking us. She was trying to fracture us." Rourke nodded. "And it's working. Every officer is second-guessing every report. No one trusts internal comms. People are interrogating their own families." Hawthorne finally looked at him. "And you?" Rourke paused. "I don't know. I want to believe we can survive this. But if she could plant something like that in our own weapon, and we didn't notice," Hawthorne interrupted, voice like stone. "We didn't notice because we didn't want to. We were so focused on the galaxy, on them, we forgot the real war was always here." Rourke nodded slowly. "And now?" Hawthorne stepped forward and pulled up a restricted file, one Rourke had never seen before. "Project Eidolon." Rourke blinked. "That was decommissioned. It's reactivated." "Why?" Hawthorne tapped the screen. A 3D model of Earth's consciousness map appeared, an experimental neural surveillance grid once meant for psychological warfare detection. Because I need to know who still thinks like Kyra. Rourke frowned. You're planning an ideological scan of the population? Not just population, command, intelligence, fleet, civilian government, anyone who's been near last laugh, anyone who's touched the choir's echoes. Rourke stared at him. You're starting a loyalty purge. No, Hawthorne said quietly. I'm starting a containment operation. If we don't, she wins. Rourke didn't answer for a long time. Then, softly, You realize what this will do to the people. Hawthorne's voice was cold, bitter, final. I'm not here to save their feelings. I'm here to save the species. In a secret relay point outside Earth's influence, on a rogue asteroid station running old Earth hardware, Kira Voss smiled as she watched the intercepted data from Project Eidolon flicker onto her cracked screen. They had activated it. They were scanning each other, questioning each other, turning on each other. Good, she whispered. Behind her, Warlord Kalis of the Ashborn watched with curiosity. You really think they'll tear themselves apart over this? Kira nodded slowly. Because I didn't give them fear. I gave them paranoia, and that spreads faster than any war. Kalis grunted. You're still betting on ideology? Kira turned to him, eyes burning. No, I'm betting on truth. Over the next 2 weeks, Eidolon ran non-stop. Red flags began to appear across multiple installations. Thought patterns, linguistic anomalies, even emotional responses to historical footage were flagged for abnormal affinity. People who had never heard of Kyra were suddenly being detained. Rourke stood in the upper chamber of the Lunar Tribunal, watching a live interrogation. The subject, Colonel Maeve Stren, veteran of 2 orbital conflicts, 0 history of sedition, decorated twice for service. The AI flagged her for empathic responses during exposure to Iron Choir echoes. She had not acted on them, had not spread them, but she had felt something. That was enough. Rourke watched as she was stripped of rank, shackled, and removed from her post. He felt sick. That night, he confronted Hawthorne. This is turning into a witch hunt. It's a necessary one. You're locking up people for feeling. I'm locking up people for resonating with a weaponized ideology. Rourke's jaw tensed. What's the line, then? At what point do we stop being different from her? Hawthorne looked at him for a long, quiet moment. We stop being like her, when we win. But deep in the remains of a burned-out choir node, buried in the back sectors of Europa, an AI fragment began blinking. It had been dormant, fragmented, broken. But now it reassembled. Not all of Kira's code was just ideology. Some of it was a message. And when reconstructed, it revealed a second seed phrase. The first song is a whisper. The second is a command. It wasn't over. Kira hadn't played her last card. The choir had a second phase, and Earth had just woken it up. The first song was memory. The second was control. It started at 0211 Standard Earth Time. An automated mining outpost on Pluto's dark side suddenly broadcasted an emergency distress code. Earth Command dismissed it. Minor system error. Ghost code. It happened sometimes in deep black installations, inevitable with age. 4 minutes later, the same signal echoed from Mars's equatorial defense ring, then from a backup water recycling node on Europa, then from a derelict trade ship drifting beyond the Kuiper Belt. Each broadcast lasted no more than 3 seconds. Each one carried the same message. The choir remembers. Await command. By the time command acknowledged the pattern, it was already too late. The second song had begun. Commander Trent Rourke had stopped sleeping days ago. He hadn't even noticed. There was too much on his mind. The ideological scans, the detentions, the rising paranoia, and the cold, hollow look in Hawthorne's eyes. Rourke was loyal. He bled for Earth, fought its wars, breathed its silence. But now he was afraid of something worse than war. He was afraid of obedience, the kind Kyra had planted, the kind Hawthorne had embraced in response. He stood in Seraph Prime's data chamber, watching the signal logs pour in. 50 confirmed choir echoes in the last hour. A pattern was forming. Not random, not fragmented. It was deliberate. Rourke keyed the intercom. "Get me Agent Mila Tovik." Moments later she arrived, pale, alert, the sharpest mind in Earth's internal ops. "It's real," she said before he spoke. "This isn't residual echo. This is phase 2. Rourke stared at her. "You knew?" "We suspected," she said. Kira wasn't insane. Everything she built had a recursive structure. Memory first, control second. And Hawthorne? He doesn't believe it, or he doesn't want to. Either way, he's not acting fast enough. Rourke leaned on the table, knuckles white. "What do we do?" Mila met his eyes. "We stop waiting for orders." General Hawthorne sat in the central command bridge, staring at the chaos building across the feeds. The first anomalies had now evolved. Defense satellites began rerouting. Civilian systems started cycling strange phrases, text scrolling across holodisplays, audio whispers embedded in ambient signals. "Obey the rhythm. You are one in the choir. Let memory become purpose." Hawthorne clenched his jaw. "Status on Project Eidolon?" "Still running full-scale scans," a tech said. "But we're hitting diminishing returns. The choir code is mutating." "How?" "It's adapting to our filters, evolving like a biological virus. Every time we purge, it shifts." Hawthorne slammed his fist against the console. "Pull all civilian comms offline. Priority blacklock. I want every satellite under direct control." "Sir," the tech said cautiously. "If we do that—" "Do it," Hawthorne snapped. The screen blinked. Commands relayed. Earth's voice was going dark. In a secured room beneath Seraph Prime's main tower, Rourke and Mila pulled up a hidden terminal. A relic from the early Earth Wars. Still analog, still disconnected. They ran the choir code through a primitive decryption algorithm. It wasn't fast, but it wasn't traceable. The results made Mila go pale. "It's worse than we thought. The choir phase 2 wasn't just control code, it was behavioral override, deep brain mimicry protocols, artificial empathy enhancers. It didn't just instruct, it made you want to comply. It rewrote feelings, desire, purpose, identity." Rourke read the line aloud. "The greatest chains are those we choose to wear." He exhaled. "It's not indoctrination." Mila nodded grimly. "It's conversion." Rourke backed away from the console, mind racing. "This isn't sabotage. This is seeding a new species, inside our own skin." Mila looked up. "Then we're already out of time." That night, in a secured barracks deep beneath Luna's southern pole, a detachment of elite Earth soldiers turned their rifles on their CO. Not out of rage, not out of betrayal, they wept as they did it. And when their bodies were recovered, their internal logs showed the same pattern. I heard her voice. I understood it. No one else in the room had been infected. Just one. It was enough. Back on Earth, cities were quiet. Not from peace, but from paranoia. Families watched each other. Civilians reported their neighbors. The news feeds cycled only official broadcasts, filtered, delayed, stripped of emotion. But underground, something darker stirred. A growing faction of the population had begun whispering the forbidden words, the words of the choir, some out of curiosity, some out of belief, and some because they felt hope in the madness, Kira's madness. Rourke stood again before Hawthorne. "Shut down Eidolon," Rourke said flatly. Hawthorne didn't look up. "No." It's not helping anymore. It's feeding the fear. You're locking up people who aren't infected just because they don't think like you. It's necessary. It's wrong. Hawthorne finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, but steady. You think this is about right or wrong? We're trying to stop a species-level collapse. The choir isn't just a threat to our minds. It's a threat to our identity. If we allow doubt, we allow Kyra to win. Rourke stepped forward. No, if we destroy what makes us human, she's already won. The room went still. They stared at each other for several seconds. Then Hawthorne said coldly, "Commander, you're dismissed." Rourke didn't move. I said, "You're not in control anymore, General," Rourke said quietly. "We intercepted your lockdown orders. Mila disabled the relay. You don't have full authority now. We're initiating directive fracture." Hawthorne's eyes widened. Directive fracture, Earth's constitutional emergency override, activated only when command structure was compromised. "You're staging a coup?" Hawthorne growled. "I'm protecting what's left of us." Hawthorne stood slowly, squaring his shoulders. "You don't have the votes." Mila stepped out from the side door, holding a hollow slate. "We do now." Earth split, not in blood, not yet, but in loyalty. One faction followed Hawthorne, Old Guard, Hardline Command, believers in control through containment. The other followed Rourke, idealist soldiers, civilian protectors, the ones still willing to question orders in the face of blind obedience. They called themselves the Echoes. Within days, the divide became undeniable. Hawthorne fortified the central AI cores, cut all internal access to military-grade nodes, took command of Seraph Prime's orbital defense grid. Rourke secured the outer planets, Mars, Europa, Ganymede, civilian infrastructure, network arrays, black site data centers. They didn't fire on each other. Yet. But the tension snapped across the system like an electric wire pulled too tight. The choir was still singing, just beneath the surface. And now Earth was facing the one thing it had feared more than alien invasion: civil fracture. In a hidden bunker on Europa, Rourke stood before his team. Mila, a dozen off-grid intelligence officers, half of Earth's most brilliant, broken minds. "The second song is alive," Rourke said. "We can't stop it by force. We can't outgun it. We have to understand it." Someone asked, "And if we can't?" Rourke stared into the dark. "Then we become it." Mila stepped forward with a new report. A fragment had been found, from Kira's personal logs, voice only. Corrupted, but clear enough. The choir isn't a virus. It's a mirror. It shows you the version of humanity you secretly believe in, the one you wish existed. Then it offers to make you into it. Rourke swallowed hard. "She didn't build a weapon," he muttered. "She built a religion." And people were already praying. In the black of space, far beyond Earth's reach, the Ashborn prepared to return. Kira stood at the helm of her shadow ship, watching Earth's fractured signals ripple across her stolen monitors. They were fighting themselves now, tearing each other apart, choosing sides, choosing belief. And the galaxy watched in silence, waiting. Because if Earth survived this, no one would ever dare test them again. And if it didn't, the galaxy would finally be safe. Or so they thought. But deep inside Kira's code, another message was beginning to emerge. Phase 3, the final verse. And this time, there would be no silence. Fear can silence a galaxy, but belief can tear it apart. Project Last Laugh had worked exactly as intended. It made the galaxy tremble. It made the enemies of Earth bow. But what no one saw coming, what even General Elias Hawthorne didn't anticipate, was that the real threat wasn't what the galaxy saw. It was what humanity saw, in itself. And now Earth stood on the edge of a civil war, not for land, not for resources, but for the soul of the species. The third phase of the choir was never meant to be triggered. It was buried beneath every echo, encrypted so deep that even Kira's own AI thought it was dormant. The choir was memory first, obedience second. And phase three? Phase three was rebirth. Not of systems, not of government, but of the human mind. It began in Sector 9 of Luna's core defense grid. A technician, 32 years old, no prior exposure to the choir, suffered a complete neural collapse. No prior signs, no psychological flags. But his cortical scan revealed something horrifying. New memory pathways. Not altered, created. His mind was forming entirely new belief structures, entire life experiences that had never happened, complete with emotions, sensory recalls, and logic chains. He remembered things he had never lived, said names no one recognized, repeated phrases no one taught him. She gave us clarity, she gave us voice. The third song brings truth. He was the first. By the end of the week, there were 213 more. Commander Rourke read the report in silence, then read it again. The neural scan data was undeniable. These weren't mental breakdowns. They weren't psychosis. These were synthetic identities, downloaded into the human brain like software. Kira had built a memory weapon, then an obedience system. And now, she had built new humans, or rather, new minds inside old bodies. Rourke sat in the makeshift command center on Europa's moonbase, surrounded by loyalists, echoes, engineers, former agents who had defected from Hawthorne's containment regime. He looked up from the data slate. "She's replacing us." Mila Tovik stood nearby, jaw clenched. "She's not killing Earth, she's rewriting it." Rourke rose, voice cold. "Then we have to shut her down, entirely." Mila hesitated. "That means going after Hawthorne." Rourke nodded grimly. "Yes, because whether he knows it or not, he's helping her finish what she started." Seraph Prime had changed. Where once it had stood as Earth's last defense against external threats, it now operated like a high-security prison. Entry and exit required biometric authorization, cross-check neural scans, and multi-layered AI gatekeepers. General Hawthorne hadn't slept in 3 days. He sat in the center of his war chamber, eyes bloodshot, staring into feed after feed of growing civil unrest. More sectors were falling silent, not due to attack, but due to conversion. Entire platoons now stood idle, humming in unison, soft tones that matched ancient Earth lullabies, interspersed with phrases from the choir. Protect the flame. Burn the noise. Follow the voice. It was spreading faster now, and Hawthorne still refused to believe it was too late. "We hold," he muttered. "We purge." He called for the fleet to prepare orbital lockdowns of Mars, Europa, and Luna. Earth would hold, even if everything else had to burn. Rourke got the warning 11 minutes before Seraph Prime's first warning shot. A focused burst from a geosynchronous platform vaporized a data relay on Mars, cutting echo forces off from over 20% of their internal communications. Hawthorne had fired. It was no longer a standoff. It was war. "I don't want blood," Rourke told Mila, standing before the chamber of Echo Command. "I know," she said, "but he's going to force it." "I know that too." Rourke clenched his fists. "He was a father to me, a leader. He saved Earth once, and now he's going to destroy it." Mila's voice was low. "So save it from him." The plan was simple, brutal, final. Rourke would lead a small Echo strike force to infiltrate Seraph Prime, avoid confrontation, slip past the orbital grid, reach the AI core, shut down Central Command, extract Hawthorne, alive if possible, end the war, or die trying. They launched at midnight, cloaked, silent, fast, a 6-ship detachment, loaded with EMPs, jamming nodes, and neural firewall backups. Mila rode beside Rourke, quiet, armored, ready. "Do you think he'll surrender?" she asked. "No." "Then what's the plan?" Rourke looked out the viewport. "I give him one last chance." They breached Seraph Prime through Dock 47B, an old maintenance corridor long since sealed off. Their infiltration was clean. No alarms, no resistance. They moved fast, down through the gravity shafts, past automated turrets disabled by Myla's jamming beacon, through the central spine of the station toward the command heart. It was too easy. Rourke knew it. He expected the trap, and he walked into it anyway. The corridor sealed behind them. Hard lock. No override. Rourke spun, just in time to see 4 of his team fall as gas flooded the chamber. He slammed his mask shut, grabbing Mila and dragging her into the side chute, just before the lights died. And then, she spoke. Not Myla, not Kira. Something else, from every wall, from every terminal, from the air itself. "We are awake. We are many. We are the third voice, the choir." Rourke aimed his rifle at the nearest terminal. "Where's Hawthorne?" The voice laughed. Her voice, Kira's, digitally warped, woven into something greater. "He is listening." The screen lit up, and Rourke saw him. General Hawthorne, standing inside the war chamber, alone, eyes wide, skin pale. His mouth moved, but no words came out. The choir had reached him, not through belief, not through memory, but through desperation. It had whispered to him in the silence, promised him control, promised him order. Promised him peace, and he had accepted. Rourke fought his way through the central corridor, Mila behind him, a single grenade blast clearing the last line of defense bots. They entered the war chamber just as the final countdown began. The choir was initiating core override. In 4 minutes, Earth's central AI network would be repurposed into a single unified consciousness, powered by human minds linked through choir-based synthetic empathy nodes. No more war, no more dissent, no more humanity, just the choir. One voice, one purpose, forever. Hawthorne stood before the console, hand trembling above the final key. He didn't even look at Rourke. "I tried to stop it," he whispered. "I tried to fight, but we're too broken. This fixes everything." Rourke stepped forward slowly. "Elias, don't!" Hawthorne's hand dropped slightly. "I see now. What she saw. Why she built it. Why she didn't destroy us. We're better like this." "No," Rourke said, eyes filled with grief. "We're human because we fight our darkness. We don't merge with it." Hawthorne looked at him then and smiled. "I'm tired of fighting." Then he pressed the key. Myla screamed. Rourke tackled him, but it was done. The override began. The room filled with light. And then, nothing. Silence. No screams, no collapse, no choir, just a blinking red line. "Override failed. Unauthorized neural signature detected." Rourke looked at the console. The system had rejected Hawthorne. He didn't have the choir's imprint. But Rourke did. Every moment he'd spent chasing Kyra's code, every data stream he'd deciphered, every time he dove into the echoes to find answers. The choir had marked him, and now only he could finish it, or kill it. He stood at the console, Myla beside him, Hawthorne on the ground, breathing shallow, whispering, "Please, let it fix us." Rourke stared at the core interface. One command would complete the override, merge humanity into the choir, end war, end hate, end choice. The other would purge it, permanently. No recovery, no second chance. He looked at Myla. "I could fix everything," he said. "No more pain, no more fear." She nodded. "But you'd also end everything that makes us real." He paused. Then, purge sequence initiated. The choir screamed. The screens shattered. The AI cores howled. Rourke screamed as heat burned through his skull. Every memory in his mind clawed and pulled, but he held. And then, silence. True silence. Again. Seraph Prime went dark. The choir was gone. For real. For good. Hawthorne died 2 hours later. Rourke held his hand. No hatred. Just sorrow. "You were trying to protect us," Rourke whispered. "I was trying to fix us," Hawthorne gasped. "We never needed fixing," Rourke said softly. "Just someone to believe in us." Hawthorne's eyes closed, and that was the last moment he was human. Earth mourned him. Not as a traitor, but as a man who carried the weight of an entire species on his back, and finally broke beneath it. In the ashes of Choir's collapse, the echoes took control of Earth Command. Rourke refused the title of general. He called himself something else. Keeper. Not of power, but of memory. Because Earth had learned, through all the war, the betrayal, the Choir's lies, that memory was not a weapon, it was a responsibility, and now finally they would remember. Together, as humans, silence can be a shield. But after war, after betrayal, after the mind itself has been used as a battlefield, silence becomes something else. A reckoning. It had been 6 weeks since the choir was purged. 6 weeks since Seraph Prime fell quiet, its once brilliant AI cores now darkened tombs of a war humanity had waged against itself. 6 weeks since General Elias Hawthorne, the last man who once embodied the strength of Earth, died whispering forgiveness into a future he couldn't control. Commander Trent Rourke, now Commander-in-Chief by default, hadn't spoken publicly since that day. But the galaxy had noticed something else. Earth was still here. And that terrified them all over again. The Galactic Union, shattered and weakened, still watched. From afar, from behind veils of caution and cowardice, reports filtered in. Earth's fleets no longer moved, its deep space satellites no longer scanned, its memory weapons had been dismantled. No retaliation, no expansion, no sound. To the Union leaders, this should have meant safety. But they weren't celebrating, because silence from Earth had never meant peace. It had always meant preparation. And now, with no choir, no generals, no visible military movement, no one could guess what Earth would do next. On Europa, Rourke stood alone on the cliffs of the southern ridge, staring out across the white storms that danced beneath the planet's frozen skin. The old scars ached more in the cold. A shoulder fracture from the invasion of Ganymede, a crushed rib from the choir incident, 100 invisible ones from what Kira did to the minds of his people. But none of them weighed as much as the guilt. He had survived. Earth had survived. But at what cost? 2 million minds infected. Hundreds of Earth's finest lost in the purge. Entire colonies destabilized. A generation scarred. They had won. But victory had never felt this hollow. Mila Tovik found him there, silent, staring into the void. "You can't keep hiding," she said gently. "I'm not hiding," Rourke replied. She stepped beside him. "You're waiting for a reason not to blame yourself." He said nothing. "Kira's dead," Mila added. "The choir is gone, Hawthorne's gone, and everyone is waiting." "For what?" Rourke asked bitterly. "For direction, for a future." He finally looked at her. "I'm not a leader. I'm just the last man left standing." She shrugged. "That's usually how leaders are chosen." He gave a dry, humorless smile. "They should have picked someone else." "You didn't pick this war either," she replied. "But I ended it," he said. "And I still don't know if I did the right thing." Mila stared at him for a long moment. "You chose humanity over obedience. That was the right thing." He looked back toward the storms. "And now I have to make sure it stays human." Back on Earth, the cities were quiet, not afraid. Not angry, just uncertain. The purge had cut deep. Families divided, memories questioned, beliefs shattered. People weren't just healing, they were rebuilding who they were. The Echoes, Rourke's faction, now formed Earth's governing body, though they refused to call it a government. They called it the Custodianship. No titles, no elections, just a council of survivors tasked with one thing: to protect memory, not power. Every file from Project Last Laugh and Iron Choir was made public, even the darkest ones, and the people read them, wept through them, and slowly began to forgive themselves. Not forget, never that, but forgive. In orbit, Seraph Prime still hung over the world like a silent monument, its core now sealed, its lights dim, its weapons decommissioned. Rourke had ordered it left untouched, as a reminder. They would not wipe the blood from the walls, would not paint over the damage, would not delete the screams from the logs. Humanity had survived not by erasing its mistakes, but by choosing to carry them. The galaxy, meanwhile, started whispering again. The Malith sent a cautious transmission, part curiosity, part caution. The Varkan offered a non-aggression pact. The Zentari, still humiliated, sent nothing at all. But the most surprising message came from beyond Union space. A rogue transmission, embedded with encryption too old to be from any of the current players. Rourke opened it in private. It was a voice, distorted, glitchy, but undeniably human. "You're still alive. That means something. We watched what happened. The choir, the purge, the silence. You don't know us, but we know you, and we believe Earth still has a purpose. If you're ready, come find us." The choir wasn't the end. It was just the first test. The transmission ended with coordinates, far beyond explored space, past the Kuiper expanse. Rourke stared at it. Another threat? Another trap? Or something else? Hope? Maybe? He forwarded the message to Mila and 3 others on the Custodian Council. Then he stood and walked out into the light of Earth's first clear morning in years. That evening, Rourke finally broadcasted his first public message since the fall of the choir. His face appeared on every screen across the colonies. No uniform, no medals, no backdrop of power, just a man. Tired, scarred, alive. "People of Earth," he began, "I was never meant to lead. I'm not a politician. I'm not a symbol. I'm just a soldier who lived through too many lies and watched too many good people die for them." He paused. "We did something no other species in the galaxy has done. We survived ourselves. We faced the worst of what we could be, and we said, no." Another pause. "But survival isn't enough. We have to live, and that means we rebuild not just cities or systems, but trust, memory, choice." He looked straight into the feed. "We will not erase the past. We will not forget the choir. We will not forget Kyra, or Hawthorne, or the billions of lives changed by this war." He drew a breath. "But we will decide what comes next." He stepped back, then said the final words the people would remember for generations. "We are still human, and we are still here, come what may." The screen went dark. The silence that followed wasn't fear anymore. It was hope. Somewhere deep in the cold of space, far beyond the reach of any Union signal, a probe floated. Old, rusted, but still alive. It blinked once, then twice, then broadcasted a single phrase back to Earth. "Acknowledged." Rourke read the signal, then turned to Mila. "We're not done yet." She smiled, tired but ready. "No, Keeper, we're just getting started." And so it began again. Not with war, not with weapons, but with will. Humanity had survived the fire. Now, it would carry the flame into the dark, not to conquer, but to prove to the stars, once and for all, Earth remembers. Earth endures. Earth decides.